Today let's talk about the 9 essential chords. So I put these chords together years ago when I found that whenever I taught a student a song, inevitably 99% of the time the chords would fall into one of these or a few of these 9 essential chords. Okay, so you may say you may see other teachers having less chords or maybe even more chords, but these are the ones that you use all the time. I like when I teach, I like to teach folks just what it is that they need to know to get to where it is that they want to go, and then if they want to learn the details later on, we can do that too. But I want to learn, when I'm learning something, I want the quickest path there. Okay, where I'm learning, where I'm getting the bulk of everything that I need, and then I can always learn the other stuff later. There's literally thousands of chords that one can learn on the guitar. And thousands of those chords you will never use or probably rarely ever use. These 9 essential chords you're going to use all the time. So this is why we're concentrating on them, okay? Hopefully you have your PDF pulled up here. The chords are E minor, E, A minor, C, D, D minor, A major, B7, and G. Okay. Now we can, when we call a chord major, we can use it. I purposely put an A major here instead of an A because we can have a major chord, which is described by A major, or A. Okay, so if you just say the letter name of a chord, like play an E chord, what a musician means is play an E major chord. If they wanted you to play a minor chord, they'd say play an E minor chord. But otherwise, if they just say play a C chord, that means C major. They say play a D chord, that's D major. If they say play an A major, play an A major, okay? All right, so let's look at the techniques here. The first chord being the E minor, okay? Now notice the red circles that are within the chord, that's the letter name of that particular chord. So that's why the E minor and the E major, or the E, both have that low E in the bass. And that's that red circle there, okay? That's because that's the root note. Now we're going to learn to construct these chords later on, but suffice to say, that's the root note or the benchmark note that all the rest of the math of the chord is based upon, which we're going to learn more about later on. So I grouped these specifically this way because I want you to see the first 4 chords all kind of meld into each other. So check this out. Here's our E minor. And I want you to notice when you go from the E minor to the E major, the only thing you do is you put your first finger down. Now notice we're not playing the E minor like this, lifting our 2 fingers up and then putting 3 fingers down, lifting them up and then putting 2 fingers down. We're not doing that. What we're doing is we're just moving the 1 finger back and forth that needs to move. This is what we call economy of movement. And I want to introduce it to you in this video, but we're going to talk about it a lot more later on. When you see your favorite guitar player speeding across the neck or changing chords quickly, it's not because their hands are any faster than yours. Trust me when I say this. It's a different phenomenon than, say, like running on a football field and running against a football player, an NFL player. It's not that your favorite guitar player has faster fingers than you, okay? If they are faster, maybe only a tiny bit, it's that they're very refined in their playing, and they're very economical. Whether they know this or not, this is why it's happening. They're very economical. So if they're moving from one chord to the next, instead of making big movements like this or making unnecessary movements, if I'm going from the E minor to the E, look at that small little movement I'm making, and I'm getting the chord that I want every time. Okay, so this is something I want you to observe whenever you're transitioning or changing between 2 chords. That's what we call transitioning. So here's our E, and if you notice, if you take that whole E chord, you move it down 1 string, all 3 fingers will move down 1 string, then we have our A minor chord. Okay, it's the same look, we're just moving it down 1 string. I also want you to notice that the X, there's an X in parentheses on that 6th string, that low E string. So that means we prefer not to play it. Okay, if it was just an X, we'll say don't play it at all. If it's an X in parentheses, it means try not to play it, but if you do, it's not the end of the world because that note, in this case an E, is actually part of the A minor chord. An A minor chord is an A, C, and E. Okay, so when I strum this, the A minor chord, I'm just playing A's, C's, and E's. So I can easily play this low E in there, and it's still an A minor chord. It's still going to sound fine. It's not like I'm playing an A minor with an F in the bass, which has a little bit of a conflicting sound. That one sounds a little bit smoother. But the reason I'm saying try to just play the A in the bass and not the E is we really want to get acclimated to this idea of starting the chord on the lowest note, which is the letter name of the chord, okay, to start off, okay? So, and I also want you to notice when you're going back and forth between these chords, notice the similarities, okay? So when you're practicing this, you'll practice the E, you'll practice the E major, practice the E, E major. I'm sorry, E minor, E major, E minor, E major, E minor, E major. Then you'll practice the E major, A minor, E major, A minor, E major, A minor, okay? And what you want to do is you want to go back and forth between these two, okay? Back and forth just like this, okay? And then you can get to picking them. But you want to understand the movement there first before you do anything else, okay? So then notice here's our A minor, and here's our C chord. Now notice the difference between the A minor and the C chord. Look, one finger is moving. So this is something, again, that I want you to get acclimated to, is that your fingers don't need to lift up every single time. And in fact, if you do that, you're creating a larger margin of error because more fingers need to lift up, more fingers need to go back down, they need to land in the correct space, and you're causing more problems for yourself. So what you want to do is you want to take your time and you want to say, all right, finger, you're going to move over here, and you literally can say that and sit there and concentrate on this, okay? Okay, it's moving over there. At first, this is difficult to do because we're not used to moving our fingers independently like this, okay? But here we go. That's going to be the motion. So that's the only difference between the A minor and the C, right? Now the D chord is a chord in and of itself, and you'll notice that the low E string has an X on it, and the A string has an X in parentheses. That means the A is actually in the D major chord, which is a D, A, F sharp. Okay, so we could play it with a D in the bass, or with an A in the bass, but let's play it from the 4th string down. So you're going to put your pick on the 4th string and strum that down, okay? All right. All right, so now let's look at the D minor chord. So you may say to yourself, how can I get my finger back there? But if you notice the numbers that are on these circles, it tells you exactly where your finger should go. So in this case here, we have a D minor chord, and you're going to take that note, you're going to take that fingering and change it actually. So now your first finger is going to be at the 1st fret of the 1st string. And you're going to have that kind of sound going on now, okay? So here's your D major, here's your D minor. And so both those fingers have to move in order to do this, okay? Okay, let's take a look at the A major. The A major has the low E string. We're not going to play that. We're going to play it from the 5th string down. And in this case here, you're playing 2, 3, and 4. Some folks will play this with fingers 1, 2, and 3. That's fine also. And some people actually they'll switch fingers 1 and 2 around so that they can fit more fingers within that small little area. So yes, folks play the A major chord and they say, geez, that's crazy. Those fingers are so squashed together. I can't believe that. How am I going to get over that? You will get over that. You will be able to do this. I promise you, everybody runs into this. You know, it's not that your hands are too big or too small or anything else. This will work for you, I promise. Okay? All right, let's take a look at the B7 chord. The B7 chord is also kind of squished up, if you will. And we're not going to play that low E string. It's muted, okay? So this is the chord that we have, okay? Our B is our 2nd fret of the 5th string there. That's why we have that red circle around it. That's our root, and that's why it's called the B7, because it's got the B in the bass. And it's a 7th chord, which we're going to learn about more later, but right now the only thing we want to do is be able to play the chord, okay? Now, You know, the D kind of stands by itself, the D minor stands by itself, and so does the A. However, the B7 and the G are very closely related. So watch this. If I take this B7, watch what I'm going to do here. Only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scooch it up 1 fret, just like that. And then fingers 1 and 2 are going to come up, boom. Third finger is going to go down, boom, and that's our G chord. Okay, so again, when you're playing this, I want you to play the chords individually first. Make sure that you can do that using the technique that we talked about. Then what I want you to do is, for the chords that I mentioned to you that are similar, transition back and forth between them, because realistically when we're playing songs, we're not just playing one chord, we're playing several chords, and we need to be able to transition, and you might as well get started now, okay? We're really going to emphasize this more later, but I promise you that if you start doing this now, it's really going to keep you ahead of the ball game. And what you're going to do is, when you're doing this, is just look, grab the chord. You don't even need to strum it quite yet, okay? Just going back and forth between 2 chords. Using our strumming technique to make sure you're hitting all the notes individually, you want to do that as well. So the takeaway from this, my friends, the homework for this is to walk through each one of these chords, take it nice and slow. I promise you it's going to be a little bit frustrating, and I promise you that all those frustrations are going to go away and you're going to be able to conquer these chords. I promise. All right, my friends, let's keep going.